This content is for kids.
It's not for kids.
Isn't that what I said?
No, it's not for kids. If you are 13 years or younger, this is not for you. Do I have to kill somebody in order to actually make that point across?
No, man, you don't have to kill no one.
Wait a second.
Oh, no.
We return to our planet. The High Court may well sentence you to torture.
He likes movies, we like movies. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. I'd buy that for $1.
Greetings! You're watching SeptumSin vs. the World. I'm SeptumSin. This is part 4 of our video game Stroll series. Now we're going to get to see some backtracking, so to speak, because I added a couple of games. Once I have them through the pickups, I will put them back in here. Like, I've got actually a couple I haven't put in my pickups yet, and those will be added to the video game Stroll later. So I'm going to start with those first. They're Switch games. If they weren't Switch games, unless they're PlayStation 1 games for some reason, I won't be backtracking. So the first one is one that helps me complete these, because I have all of them except for 3. Well, 4, if you count the one that's never come to the United States, on some console, even if it's a portable console, and that's the Dragon Warrior series. So this is the first 3. They got ported over to the Switch. Now, I don't have this opened yet, but it's kind of cool. They kind of based it off of the mobile ones, which are okay. The SNES version is still the best one, which of course never came to the United States. But still, it is kind of cool to have this. This is also kind of an import version. I'm going to turn off the vibration setting on my phone here. But I did really like having this. It just is kind of cool to play this on the big screen once again. I don't really have the NES versions because, you know, I've got an emulator on my TV, but I don't really have that. And the SNES version on the TV doesn't have a translation, so it's kind of cool to have that in place. And one day I really would love to see a Switch collection of all of them, and I would also love to see 10 out, because it goes straight to 11, and I went ahead and I got 11R. Was it 11R? No, 11S. So it's Dragon Quest XI, Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition. So yeah, this is a little bit lower graphically, supposedly, than the others, but it also has a ton of extra content, and you can play it in a 16-bit mode, which is really awesome. I can't wait to check this out. I'm trying to do a full-on playthrough of this, but it's very slow going. I've already taken these 2 on the mobile. So I've actually beaten these 2 versions of these 2, and this one was the hardest. This one is just long, and it is fun, but it is overwhelming, just the amount of content that's in it. So it'll take me a while to get through it. And I'm probably not going to come back to it until I've beaten some other games on my systems. So, back to the dusty PlayStation, I guess, which is the Final Fantasy Anthology. Again, a lot of these are just kind of kept more for sentimental value. This has Final Fantasy 5 and 6 on it, which is kind of cool. Back then, in the PlayStation days, all Square games had, and it was Squaresoft, not Square Enix back then, they were separate companies, they had these white discs. You could always tell them by that. So, of course, this is Terra on there. This is how I originally played 5, because it really had never come out on anything before that in the United States. I mean, the kind of manual. I like having these colorful manuals here. There are better versions of both of these out now. Oh. Don't get me. You get this, and of course you got that classic PlayStation black background. You got Kefka on this side here. So they've added a couple of these cutscenes to the original SNES versions, and there's a decent way to play it. Again, I'm not saying it's bad. Matter of fact, they're awesome games. I'm a little bit less in love with Final Fantasy V because I feel like it's more meandering and you get lost easily when it comes to, well, what am I supposed to do? You ask that question a lot. But still, it really doubled down on the class system. And I haven't beaten 3 yet, so I can't really say how that is. I'm also working my way through that series. But 2 has me bogged down. So, next is Final Fantasy Chronicles, which I also thought was cool because it had Final Fantasy IV and Chrono Trigger. Final Fantasy IV is probably one of my favorite Final Fantasy games. And Chrono Trigger is just awesome. Of course, you've got those white discs again. That's pretty cool there. Now, one of the other cool things they added in, of course, cutscenes again, which is cool. Load times, though, are atrocious on these. I mean, big time atrocious. If you've got these games on other ways to play them, you're probably better off doing it. So it's Chrono Trigger. There's the Chrono Trigger thing there. But I love the anime cutscenes that Toriyama put together for it. It just is pretty cool. Chrono Trigger is probably one of the greater Squaresoft games out there. It's still great fun. I would love to see it. I'd love to see it coming to the Switch. Give it some quality of life improvements. Maybe smooth it out a little bit. You don't have to do like the full Final Fantasy VII treatment and make it unrecognizable, but maybe take it, smooth out these things. Shoot, make it like they did Wonder Boy and Monster World, where you have cartoony graphics, very similar gameplay, and just like make it look like it's fully animated as it's going at it. That would be really cool to see. So one that I have not beaten, I've beaten those 2 again because I love playing those games. This one I've beaten half of. You can pretty much guess which half. This is the Final Fantasy Origins collection. You can see the original art style. They have upgraded graphics for these, which is very much unlike beforehand, Unlimited Saga, so they were already advertising for later stuff. 2003. I like the art here. This is kind of a move away. They started to move away from that plain white at this point. And it is pretty cool. I mean, I like the art style here. Final Fantasy 1 is still a very good game, very solid RPG. The second one is really boring and also has a lot of problems when it comes to technical issues. I am trying my best to get through it. It also has that what am I supposed to do factor to it. But I'm moving my way. I'm over halfway through. I eventually will beat it. I've got it on my PSP right now. I'm playing this version of it on the PSP, so theoretically I will beat that version. Next up, one of my favorite RPGs that I've been kind of sort of working through, but I got bogged down when it comes to the grinding aspect, is Grandia. I love this game. If you want to see a full playthrough, you should check out David Vink, I guess, one of the channels I've talked about before. He does a full playthrough of this game. The second game gets a lot of love, but I really don't think that this one gets as much love. This one's actually from Sony, but I love that disc art. That's pretty cool. And of course you get to see this thing where they're on top of the world. I love the first part of this game. The second part, unfortunately, breaks down into the typical JRPG, save the girl, all that stuff elements. But there's no manual in this one. I didn't get one. I'd gotten it used. So it's incomplete. Oh, look, there's another there. But the first part of it, I love. It's just something unique. because you're not going on an adventure because you're saving the girl or the planet or anything like that. You're going on the adventure because it's fun. You want to go on an adventure. You want to explore. It's so refreshing. If you haven't played this game, you really should. Graphically, it holds up fairly well. There is a version on the Switch, no physical yet. I'm hoping that one of these things like Limited Run or one of these games runs one. And it has the first 2 games. And there are 4 games in the series, and I've got all of them. You'll see them later. So it's just going to be really cool to get through this one and then finally try the second one, which is so loved. Alright, last one here. Legend of Dragoon. This was one that was made directly to compete by Sony with Final Fantasy VII. And you can tell that on many levels. Graphically, it's a little bit better than Final Fantasy VII, but still it's a little bit rough around the edges. Battle system is based on some sort of timing system, which is kind of unique and it is enjoyable. Once you get it down, once you get the rhythm down, it's actually pretty fun. You've got these abilities to turn into these dragon warrior type individuals and kick butt. It's a really good story. I really enjoyed this. It's a big 4-discer. It's well worth checking out if you haven't. I would love to see this remade. It'd be well worth remaking, in my opinion. If anything, again, much like I would say with some of these others, do a good smoothing out. Smooth out some of the more outdated battle mechanics, update the graphics a little bit. Wouldn't take a lot, but I think this would be worth playing again. So one of my 2 biggies on here is, of course, my Lunar Silver Star story, which is, I still got the special edition of this. Got it at EB Games for $59.99. Game prices have actually not changed all that much, believe it or not. I love this game though. It's just great. It's got full voice acting, anime cutscenes. Yes, the graphics are a little bit janky when it comes to, old school. The original game was on the Saturn, I believe, or Sega CD. One of the other 2 was Sega. But anytime you get working designs, you're just always in there. You can tell this game has been loved because there's a little bit of scratches on the case. But it's well worth having. I mean, shoot. I mean, it comes with the soundtrack. I love the covers, the disc art on this. And the soundtrack is worth it too. It is just awesome. I used to rerun the game's opening cutscenes every time I played this. I just love the opening cutscenes so much. It's so breathtaking. Sort of like Wild Arms. I really love that one's opening cutscene too. I just didn't like the game all that much. Some cool art there. And though the gameplay graphics are kind of weirder looking, it is still quite fun to play. I play the version on the Vita, which is a little bit more complex. Now you got this cloth map. Let's see if I can pull it out. If I can't, I'm not going to cause any extra damage. No, let's wait. Maybe. I can just go like this. Okay. It's been a while since I've opened this map. I may have only done it once when I first started this. I first got it, so this is very much unlike me, but you can see it. Look at that. Maybe Murder's Mask? These days. But that's just cool. I love that. This is the little steps of quality that make a special edition worthwhile. It wasn't a huge special edition. As you can tell, the price tag wasn't huge. I guess back then maybe it was a little bit bigger than what you would normally expect, but not a lot. I mean, you'd pay $60 for a regular SNES game back in those days. $70 was also not unheard of. So, yeah, it's So really, for the price, it's not bad. And yes, matter of fact, all of these PlayStation games are the original games, as I got them when they came out. They have not left my collection. This one here, I'll tell you if it did, because there are maybe like one or two, but not many on this. So of course we have an even bigger and better one for the second one. I didn't like the story as much, but this was still quite fun. I have the necklace hanging elsewhere, so I'm not going to really deal with that one at the moment. But look at the size of this box. Now, originally the necklace that she wears is included. It's got all these little standees that you can put together. And of course, another map, not a cloth one this time. For a big bad set like this, you'd think they'd put a cloth map in there, but they do have a kind of cool thing on this side, as you can see. Putting that back in. Yes, and normally the necklace would be in here. It's hanging in the bedroom. Unfortunately, this box has seen better days, so I gotta be careful. You can see it's kind of breaking apart a little bit. So this is the soundtrack. Also a good soundtrack. This series has excellent soundtracks. I could do without the slip thing though, because this basically is made to scratch CDs. And of course, another hardcover manual. I mean, beautiful art design. I mean, it's just worth flipping through. And of course, the game itself, which you can see that and that there. I also have this on other formats. So again, this is more for sentimental value. I keep it just like most of these games than it is play value. That's pretty cool. Disc art. I love disc art. I mean, you gotta appreciate these things. Of course, they slip right out of the disc holders. Of course, that. But let me go and show off the other art. Again, it's just a beautiful set of games. If you haven't played the Lunar series and you like RPGs, you really should. As long as you're not hung up like big time on graphics, you'll be fine. So next up is a really fun game. I've never played the sequel and I only have it in digital, but this one I do have, and that is Mega Man Legends. Another game that was really fun, but control-wise and graphically has a harder time holding up nowadays. Has a Breath of Fire 3, however, which I don't have anymore, but which is sad because that one graphically does hold up to current times. And as far as RPG standards are going, it actually holds up fairly well overall. But this one was fun. It was kind of a Mega Man action RPG, which was really cool. Or really, you could say as an adventure game. But it really was awesome. And it was fun. The characters were fun. The story was fun. It really was a joy to play through. This series needs a remake. Because, one, graphically it needs to be updated. But these are early 3D games. They just don't look good graphically. But also it needs a controls update. The controls are janky as all get out. It takes a while to get used to them. And I really think that with an update on that, I mean, Capcom is doing a lot of these updates. It wouldn't be hard to update these. Maybe finally get to that Mega Man Legends 3 we've all been looking for. Speaking of a game I would love to see an update for, was Parasite Eve. I love this game. Again, old school white discs. This was Square's first attempt at survival horror. They saw the success of Resident Evil. They said, well, we can do that, but let's make it a mix. Let's make it an RPG. And they did an excellent job mixing. This is my favorite of the series. I've played the sequel. I played Third Birthday. I've beaten the sequel. I have not beaten Third Birthday because I was kind of disgusted by Third Birthday. But it's essentially this story about this cop, and she runs into a, what do they call it? A strange situation during an opera performance, and all of this crazy stuff goes down. Now this is based off of something, and I'm going to pick this up real quick. Because like Resident Evil, it did have a basis in something else, but unlike Resident Evil, this one does have an American release, and this is the movie that is kind of the basis of all of it. It adds a little bit to it, but not a ton. It's out of print, but it's worth a watch. I really enjoyed it. It's a pretty cool horror film. If you haven't checked the series out, I love the mechanics. It is a little frustrating with the slowness of movement. Again, early times, getting used to 3D environments and doing this, it just didn't get mastered, especially on that hardware level. But a remake of this, again, you don't even have to change the mechanics. I think changing the battle mechanics is what made 2 a little bit less of a fun game. You don't have to change the battle mechanics all that much. You can do that kind of action RPG aesthetic. You've already seen it in Final Fantasy VII Remake. You could do something similar in this. And you can, and actually that's not a bad, it's not really a bad concept when you're looking at the battle system. They're not all that different. You got to wait for your gauge to build. You select your attack as you're running around the field. You do it within that aura. I love the weapon upgrade systems. I had a fully automatic pistol in the game, and it just was fun. I really did enjoy playing this, and I've enjoyed trying to go back to it, and there's some fun parts to it, but it's a lot more difficult to navigate these days. So that's it for my video game stroll. I hope you've enjoyed this. Of course, if you have, click that like button, share so that other people can also enjoy this lovely stuff, and of course, subscribe. The more subscribers, the better. Who knows? Maybe I'll one day be able to make this on a fuller time basis, and then you'll see a lot more quality in editing and shooting and all that lovely stuff. But until then, we'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.
Goodbye.